With this, can we have something to eat? Even just a bite of food would do. The voice strained as she offered a 10-cent coin. That was a girl about 10 years old, with what seemed to be her younger sister hiding slightly behind her, clutching her older sister's shirt hem with tears in her eyes. At that moment, I was surveying the inside of my restaurant, which was about to close for the day. In our town, there are those who would vulgarly mock and laugh at these struggling sisters. As for me, I don't want to behave like them. If I can't satisfy the hunger of these two young children in front of me, how can I satisfy the hunger of my customers? I invited the two inside the store. Please come in. The two entered the shop timidly. Just sit anywhere and wait. I made spaghetti bolognese for them. As the dishes were placed in front of them, the older sister, holding only a 10-cent, apologetically said, "Is it really okay to have two?" "Yeah, enjoy your meal." They began to eat heartily. Their eyes lit up as they looked at me and repeatedly exclaimed, "Delicious. It's so good." Little did I know at the time how much this meal would change my life. I am Chris White. My family's diner has been passed down since my grandfather's time. I took over when I was 21, freshly licensed as a chef, eager to learn everything from my father and run the diner with my parents. However, just a few months after we started working together, my father was diagnosed with a severe illness. My mother was busy caring for him, so I suddenly had to manage the diner alone. I was not without skill. I had helped out since childhood and was familiar with our recipes. Yet, replicating my father and grandfather's flavors was challenging. Every day was a struggle, both in cooking and managing the business. Our regular customers were kind. "Chris, this is delicious. You're really doing great." But even their kindness felt like pressure. Everyone wanted those original flavors, which I couldn't seem to replicate, no matter how much I experimented. As I worked, my old classmate Jack often visited the diner. It's the same old place. Since childhood, Jack, who came from a wealthy family, had derogatorily referred to our family diner as this poor-looking place and a spot for the bottom rung, using every opportunity to mock me. He flaunted his glamorous university life whenever he visited. "Unlike you, I get to enjoy my classes and clubs whenever I want. I have money even if I don't work." And he gleefully added while laughing, "At your age, sweating over work, you really are a loser." Jack disrupts the diner by insulting me in front of customers, not even bothering to order anything before leaving. However, I didn't have enough energy to get angry with him, as I was too preoccupied with my lack of confidence in my cooking, which left me feeling anxious. At 21, I believed I could handle anything, but life was not so easy. My confidence continued to wane, and my father's condition showed no signs of improving. I felt very gloomy. One day, as I was closing up, I heard a faint voice from behind a corner. "Excuse me." I turned around to see two sisters in tattered clothes. The older sister, holding out a 10-cent coin, said, "With this, can we have something to eat?" Her younger sister was pulling at her sleeve and hiding behind her. "Please, come in," I invited them into the diner. The two cautiously entered the shop. "Just sit anywhere and wait." The two girls looked around nervously, seemingly still frightened. I had some ground beef left over, so I decided to make spaghetti bolognese. However, considering their frail appearance, it seemed they hadn't eaten for days. I wondered if they could handle it, taking into account their health and the potential strain on their stomachs. I prepared 2 plates of bolognese with as little oil as possible. When I set the bolognese in front of them, their eyes lit up with excitement. However, the older sister said, "We can't accept something so incredible for just 10 cents, looking apologetic." The younger sister also held back tears, looking at her older sister. Just then, both their stomachs growled loudly. I couldn't help but laugh, and they gave a sheepish grin. Since I'd throw away the food anyway, go ahead and eat, I convinced her. They ate, crying and saying, "Delicious. It's so good, and finished everything in an instant. I was very happy to see that. I was touched that someone could cry and say my cooking was delicious. After they finished eating, I asked their names. The older sister was Tracy Johnson, 11 years old, and the younger sister was Mary, 6 years old. Other than that, I didn't ask anything, as it was clear they were dealing with something significant. I didn't want to hurt them with careless words. I thought there wasn't much more I could do for these girls. But I was glad they enjoyed the meal so much. I asked them on the spur of the moment, "Would you like to help me eliminate waste and taste test the dishes starting tomorrow?" My mouth moved before my brain could think. It was not a kind lie. I had found hope in their enjoyment of my cooking, their faces beaming as they savored each bite. From then on, the sisters began coming to the diner every evening. I started making the meals for the young girls, gradually adapting adult dishes for children as well. As I experimented, my fixation on recreating my grandfather's and father's flavors began to fade. Something inside me changed. I started focusing solely on caring for those who ate my food. My father, hospitalized, and my mother, who occasionally checked on the shop, along with our regular customers, accepted the changes in taste. My father even encouraged me, saying, "Chris, make the diner your own." The regulars also appreciated the new flavors, telling me, "Chris, your cooking has gotten even better. It's uniquely you." I began to genuinely appreciate these compliments. The Johnson sisters also grew visibly healthier and became very attached to me. Although I was only 21, they wouldn't stop calling me Mr. White. Every evening, they would excitedly ask, "Mr. White, what's for today?" Being called Mr. White at my age by young girls was a bit of a shock. I thought just Chris would have been preferable. Yet, as long as they were happy, that was all that mattered. Tracy often asked me about how to cook various dishes, and Mary would show me her drawings and her proud sketchbook. My interactions with them healed me and gave me peace of mind. However, one evening, they came in with bruises on their faces. "Our mom said it's shameful to accept charity from others," they sadly told me, and declared before leaving, "so we won't come to the diner anymore." I was shocked, realizing that what I thought was good had actually hurt them. I felt terribly guilty. The next day, Jack, as if he had been waiting for the chance, came to the diner and, in front of everyone, insinuated that I was inappropriately taking young children into this shop. I lost my temper. Spreading such terrible rumors. Without thinking, I hit him. My actions inadvertently escalated the situation into a minor police matter. Following that, a series of misfortunes ensued. First, my father succumbed to his illness. My mother, strained by years of caregiving, passed away 6 months later. I was left with the diner and a mountain of debt from my father's medical bills. I continued the diner modestly, serving our aging regular clientele. As 20 years had passed, it was inevitable that fewer people frequented the diner. The debt was still there, and continuing the business would likely require even more borrowing. During these days of almost no operation, Jack, now a successful businessman, revisited the diner. After boasting about his accomplishments, he laughed and called me a loser and a disgrace. He then offered to help by buying my diner and land to build a new establishment from his chain of eateries. The sum he offered was meager, but he added, "Out of pity, I'll just let you wash dishes." At that point, I was so exhausted that the prospect of clearing my debt and having a job seemed almost acceptable. But I couldn't make an immediate decision. "All right. Let me think about it," I said, holding on to my last bit of dignity. The next day, as I was just going through the motions of opening the diner, I noticed 2 women approaching. One had an extremely short haircut, while the other had an asymmetrical, intricate hairstyle. Their manner and attire were quite refined. They weren't the typical clientele for my rundown diner. As I retreated inside, they followed me in, which surprised me. They were stunned by the state of the diner, understandably so. In the first place, this is not a place visited by apparently respectable people like you. I almost blurted out. While I was complaining in my mind, they ordered spaghetti bolognese, which seemed out of place for them. Reluctantly, I headed to the kitchen. I carelessly prepared 2 servings of spaghetti bolognese. The woman with the very short hair took a bite and grimaced. It seemed she didn't enjoy it. Just as I was about to grumble about their unsuitability for my diner, the other woman sighed heavily and scanned the rundown interior. I was feeling quite down when the woman with the short hair suddenly cried out, "What happened to you, Mr. White?" The other woman added, "That's why we came, huh?" Taking a deep breath, she looked me in the eyes and said, "We've come to repay our debt." I was stunned. It was then I realized they were the Johnson sisters, now grown up. Tracy was the one with the short hair, and Mary had the intricate hairstyle. "You both have changed so much that I didn't recognize you. I am really surprised." Anyway, I was already 43. Tracy had become a chef, and Mary an interior designer. Without letting me object, they declared they would take charge of renovating the diner. Tracy noticed some documents left on the table. They were the contract papers from Jack. She picked them up and, with a decisive gesture, tore them apart, while Mary laughed at the act. After that, things moved quickly. Following Mary's suggestions, the diner's interior was transformed stylishly without spending much money. After just 2 or 3 days of temporary closure, the diner retained its traditional retro charm while incorporating modern touches. Tracy suggested focusing the diner's menu primarily on spaghetti bolognese to minimize waste and manage the budget more effectively. I was amazed when I tasted Tracy's spaghetti bolognese. That was just like my own recipe, but undeniably better. Proudly, Tracy exclaimed, "My goals and the start of my life all stemmed from that spaghetti bolognese. Without it, we wouldn't be who we are today." Her statement was powerful, and Mary nodded vigorously in agreement. With their connections, the diner regained its vibrancy within a month. One day, I sincerely thanked them both. "Tracy, Mary, thank you." Both wore proud smiles, and I finally voiced the apology I had been holding back, addressing a concern that had long gnawed at me. At the time, with the intention of being considerate, I didn't ask why they were in such a dilapidated state, or why they had come to the shop with only 10 cents. Perhaps I couldn't bring myself to ask. Yet, as a result, they had been injured by their parents. I was pleased to be adored by them but failed to do what an adult should have, like consulting the appropriate authorities. Perhaps, I had unconsciously avoided getting deeply involved in messy situations. I might have hurt you too with my actions. It was selfish and cruel when I think about it now. "I'm sorry," I admitted. But they just laughed it off and forgave me. Mary said, "Why are you being so formal all of a sudden?" "It's all thanks to you, Mr. White. Someone who finds it bothersome to deal with us wouldn't provide such enjoyable times." Tracy added, "I was happy you welcomed us without asking any questions." These words left me with mixed emotions, and I hesitated, wondering if now was the time to delve deeper into their story. Just as I was about to ask, the door burst open with a loud bang. At that moment, Jack strode in aggressively. With a sneering smile, he confronted me. "So, you're really not selling the land?" My resolve was clear. I have no intention of selling this diner, especially after these two helped me revive it, I declared firmly. I looked at Tracy and Mary, and both nodded vigorously in support. Jack twisted his smirk further. "What, these two? Scum tends to flock together at the bottom, huh?" The Johnson sisters glared at him fiercely. He laughed mockingly. "Oh, really scary. Well, you'll regret this." And then he left the diner. I pondered if Tracy and Mary knew Jack. They then began to reveal their whole story to me. Astonishingly, they were Jack's stepsisters. His father had abandoned their mother, who was his mistress. Their mother lived a poor life and instilled in them a high sense of pride, telling them never to accept charity. The regular scene at their home involved the family, including Jack and his father, occasionally dropping by to take pleasure in belittling the sisters. While their mother desperately pleaded with Jack's father, only to be coldly rejected. This distressing routine was why the sisters, holding on to whatever small change they could find, would wander the town night after night. For the young siblings, home was a place of terror. They had to face not only her mother being bullied but also scolding from their own mother. That must have been an environment filled with fear and devoid of safety. The only person who treated us decently was you, Mr. White, they said quietly. We paid the 10 cents out of stubborn pride, just like our mother would have. Our mother was a pitiable person. We don't hate her. But that Jack, we can never forgive him, they added firmly. It turned out Jack had instructed them to stay away from me. And it was his father who had hit the sisters. Their mother, seeing the bruises on her daughters' faces, finally took them back to her parents in the countryside. She pleaded with our grandparents, whom our mother had despised. For the first time, she considered our well-being. Tracy and Mary said as they wiped away tears, likely remembering those painful times. Their mother worked hard and passed away last year. Until then, both sisters pursued their dreams relentlessly. Tracy was inspired by my cooking to become a chef, and Mary, thinking about decorating my diner, became a designer. Losing their mother, they naturally got back to me, only to find I was out of my mind in the diner. Initially, they were shocked, but now they saw a chance to repay my kindness. I thanked them deeply and said, "Let's work hard together from now on." Jack built a new establishment right across from our diner. "You'll regret this," he had said, typical of him. In the first week, it seemed he was stealing our customers. But the sisters reassured me, "Don't worry. They'll come back." And indeed they did. Not only did our customers return, but our clientele even seemed to grow. I was astonished to see that the sisters' predictions had come true. Even to customers who usually visit chain restaurants. The sign advertising a specialty in spaghetti seems unusual. This was exactly as Tracy had advised. It was indeed a strategic victory. Moreover, we made spaghetti bolognese to fit the individual orders of our customers, modifying the taste and preparation method. Though this approach lowers turnover, it adds a premium feel precisely because we are located opposite a chain restaurant. This was the assessment published in the magazine that came to feature us. The magazine praised the serene atmosphere inside our diner, and the stylish yet unpretentious decor. Mary was also pleased with this recognition. This is all thanks to my sense of style and skills. It feels great to be recognized like this. Tracy and I were both happy because we had seen how hard Mary had worked. In less than 6 months, Jack's store went out of business. Not an unusual fate for chain establishments, but still a satisfying turn for us. The story didn't end there. It was a regular day off in the evening when I noticed a page in a weekly magazine sent by the publisher who had visited us for an interview. The article reported a coup at the company where Jack served as president, and his father as chairman. As I read on, the magazine detailed years of autocratic and nepotistic management, allegations of Jack's and his parents' tyrannical behavior, and their reckless indulgence in money and women and all scandalous claims. Without knowing the Johnson sisters, one might dismiss the article as typical exaggerated tabloid fare. "Serves him right," Tracy said from behind me, her voice mixed with laughter and tears, hinting she had been reading over my shoulder. "Well, a lot can happen in 20 years. I've finally gotten some retribution." As she spoke shakily, I cautiously asked, "What kinds of things?" Tracy sharply replied, "Don't ask," and stormed out. Though I wasn't sure what I had stirred. It seemed I had inadvertently hurt her, much like before. Mary came up to me and said, "I don't know everything either." Before she shared what the past 20 years had been like for Tracy. Tracy had been training at high-end restaurants while also making connections with people related to Jack's family. It seems she had a hand in the recent coup at their company. That's all there is to it, I suppose. There are things I can't tell you. Things she definitely doesn't want to tell you, Mary explained. She added mischievously, after all, Mr. White, you were her first love. I left the house to look for Tracy. She was sitting on a bench by the river, seemingly calmer but still shedding tears. The 20 years of hardships she endured, all while never forgetting to repay her debt to me, made me feel a deep respect for her that went beyond happiness or pity. As I approached, she started, "Oh, I'm sorry," in a flustered manner. I simply offered, "Let's go back. We have preparations for tomorrow." We walked home in silence, hand in hand. From that day, there was a mutual awareness between us, that was certain. But I am 10 years older than Tracy, who was just a little girl when we first met. Harboring romantic feelings for her didn't seem ethical or comfortable emotionally. I discussed these feelings with Mary, who is 14 years younger than me. She scoffed, "You're being overcomplicated, Mr. White. You're both adults here," leaving me at a loss. Since their arrival, Tracy had clearly become the heart of the kitchen, which also pricked at my pride as a chef. "What matters is how you feel, Mr. White. Remember when we first met?" Mary reminded me. I hesitated, remembering them as little girls, and Mary just gave me a wry smile. During these days, I went to visit my parents' graves, and they came with me. My mother, who had cared for my father, and my father, who had embraced the changes I made to the diner's menu. All of them came together in my mind. When I served spaghetti bolognese to the two worn-out girls, it was all about the little tweaks made with care. Compassion is what's most important. I wanted to bless Tracy for the next 20, 30 years or more, but found it hard to express. Then, one day, when Tracy fell ill, after a few days, she said she was ready for something more substantial than just soup. I made her the same spaghetti bolognese as before. Seeing her sit up in bed and devour it, I spontaneously proposed, "Let's get married." She simply said, "Yes." And so, we got married and now live together on the upper floor of the diner. All three of us. Mary had mentioned finding her own place. But Tracy didn't want her to leave, and I felt our home wouldn't be complete without her. So, I persuaded Mary to stay. We continue to live with compassion for each other and extend that kindness to our customers.